I hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Nedarim Daf Ayin Hey. Today is going to be a short block. We're starting at the Mishnah, just about halfway down on Ayin Hey Amid Aleph, and we'll be going until about 5 lines before the end of Ayin Hey Amid Beis tomorrow as well. Not a long blot, and all really much until Ayin Vav Amid Beis is really all one sugya, and that is the sugya of this Mishnah right here. Let's jump in and let's see what our topic of discussion will be for tonight. Ha'omer le'ishto, if a man says to his wife, Kol ha'nedarim she'tiduri mikan ad she'avo mimakom ploni harehein kayamin. Husband's about to go out of town, and he says to his wife, I'm not going to be back for a couple of weeks. Any nedarim you make while I'm gone until I come back, any neder you make is kayam. So that's what he wanted to accomplish. The Mishnah says, Lo amar klum. You can't pre-approve a neder of your wife. Not allowed to do that. The Gemara then says, but what if in his little pre-game speech, he says, Harehein mufarin. So instead of saying, while I'm gone, any nedarim you make will automatically be upheld, he says, when I'm gone, any neder you make is going to be mufar. That is subject to a machlokes in the Tanaim right here. And we will see that this is... that each side is really going to try and explain themselves as to why this is the case. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Amar Mufar, he says it actually does work. Immediate question should be, I don't understand. If the first approach doesn't work, which is that I can't be Makayim, then why can I be Mayfair? And then the next shita is V'chachamim Omrim Eino Mufar. The Chachamim say this does not work. What is the Nakudas HaMachlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim? The Mishnah itself articulates each side very clearly. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Im hafer nedarim shebo lechlal iser. If a husband is able to undo a neder that actually has been said in front of him, then all the more so he should be able to undo one that hasn't yet been said. He says, then lo yafer nedarim shalobo lechlal iser. If you're able to do afaras nedarim on a neder when it's kayam right in front of you, she says, I never want to eat Oreo cookies again, harei alai, and she says that. And if a husband can be made for that, and that's already into the category of the iser neder, then he should be able to be made for neder before they enter into the iser category of a neder. And the chachamim push back and say, you're not even like in the right parsha. How can you possibly say that? Amru lo, they said to Rabbi Eliezer, Harehu Omer ishayi kimenu v'ishayi feirenu. The pasuk says that a husband can be mekim and a husband can be mefer. Es sheba lichlal hakem, ba lichlal hafer. Only that which is begeder hakem, only that which can get a hakama, the kiyum of the husband to the wife's vow, only that would then be subject as well to hafara. But you can't have it be that hafara applies when you can't even be making yet. And the opposite as well is true as well. As shabalachlal hakem, at the last line of the Mishnah, lo balachlal hakem, but if a neder is not yet certifiable because it hasn't been made yet, lo ba lichlal hafer. So that's the machlokas between them. They both agree that if a husband says all of the upcoming vows over the next 2 weeks are mekuyam, everyone agrees that's a nothing. But when they say heifer, then that does work according to Rabbi Eliezer. And his svara very simply is that if he has the power to be making a neder that's bichlal the iser, when it's already a real neder, then all the more so before it reaches that higher, loftier level.
What if he says, what would the Chacham say if he says Lolam Vad?
In which case?
Better or worse?
Lolam Vad for which one?
Whether she makes them, whether she's Makayim.
You're saying where the line that he said in the Mishnah, he says to her, I'm going out of town.
Right. So for this period of time.
Anything that you do between now and then.
Right.
So if he says, I'm going to be Makayim, everyone agrees that doesn't work. The Mishnah says the machlokas is only if he says, I'm going to be Mayfair. So on January 1st, he makes his comment and he goes out of town that night.
Okay.
He says, sweetheart, I'll be back in 2 weeks. Any nedarim you make are going to be mufar. So what are you adding to that?
Right, but the Chacham said he can't do that.
The Chachamim said he can't, correct?
Right, but we say it every off the time. I forgot the exact wording, but
yeah, all the ones in the future as well.
Right.
It's a little hard to compare anything to hafaras nedareha of a wife, but your point is well taken. Maybe one nafkamin is that it applies to you and not to somebody else, which is that When you do Ataras Nedarim, you're referring, you can be motzi your spouse, it's true. But you could just be saying, I know that I'm going to make Nedarim because I know me, and I want to undercut them. I think your question is better than my answer. It's a good question. So the Gemara is now bothered by a chakira within Shitas Rabbi Eliezer. When Rabbi Eliezer says that with his pre-trip comment, he says, sweetheart, all of the vows you make while I'm gone are going to be mufar. They're not going to count at all. Is it that they existed for a moment and then were undone, or total no chalos at all? So the Gemara asks like this, Ibaylahu, 2 lines from the bottom, Ibaylahu Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Eliezer, who says that when a husband makes his pre-trip comment, sweetheart, none of your vows will count until I get back, is it mechal chalin? There is a chalos of the Nedarim. They do technically take effect. She said the right words, but then immediately afterwards, uvetelin. So do they count and then get undone? Odilma, or perhaps lo chalin klal, that there's no chalos to the Nedarim at all. Asks the Gemara, who cares? Lamai nafkamina. And the Gemara responds on the top of Daf, Ayin Hamid Beis, the nafkamina would be kigon de itfis achrina bahadein nidra. Let's say that a woman makes a neder, I'm not eating Oreos tonight, and the person sitting right next to her says, Va'ani, I also will not be eating Oreos tonight. So this is what the Gemara says. I amris chalin, if there is a momentary episode of this neder being chal, and only after which halachically it's batel because of the husband's comment. If that's true, then havyot fisusa. Then the va'ani, the woman sitting next to her, she says, Harei alai, that I'm not going to eat Oreos. And her friend says, I love this diet that you're on, va'ani. If there's chalos of her neder, and the sequence of events is she makes a neder, there's chalos of the neder, the woman says va'ani, and then the chalos of the neder is undone, there's bittul, then woman number 2 cannot eat Oreos either. However, Yamris lo chalin, if according to Rabbi Eliezer, there is 0 chalos, that when she says Harei alai that she's not going to eat any Oreos, there's no moment in time when that neder was chal. The neder is never chal. 0. Does no blips on the radar, nothing. She can say whatever she wants. If the husband says all of the things that happen over the next 2 weeks are mufar, then they don't even start. If that's true, then lo ikumishasha. Then the woman, the friend number 2 who wants to go on the same non-Oreo diet, when she says va'ani, it's a 0 because she's being toe-faced on the first neder. If the first neder is a 0, the second neder is a 0. So that is the Gemara's question. And the Gemara is going to provide 1, 2, 3, at least 4 answers. 4 answers before we get to the Mishnah. But we're only going to be learning the first 2 answers for tonight, and then we'll pause. So it's going to be a short daf for tonight. Answer number 1. Tashma, 3 lines down on Ayin Hamid Beis. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. He argues as follows. Im hafer nedarim shabo lechlal iser. Lo yafer nedarim shalo bao lechlal iser. If it's true, says Rabbi Eliezer, that when a woman makes a neder, and the neder is bao lechlal iser, the neder that she makes actually reaches a level where it's begeder iser nedarim. If a husband can be mefer a neder like that, all the more so, says the Gemara, lo yafer nedarim shelo bao lechlal iser. All the more so, like we saw in our Mishnah, he should be able to be made for a neder that doesn't yet enter into the threshold of a real vow. What does the Gemara infer from here? Shma mina lo chalin. It must be that there's no chalos at all. And says the Gemara, how do we know this? Miktani she'enan ba'in, that it will not ever be like that? No. Shelo ba'uktani, adayin lo ba. It means that right now it's not, but maybe there's a moment in the future where it could become chal and under other circumstances. So the Gemara asks and rejected. The Gemara says this isn't a raya one way or the other. And we're back to Rabbi Eliezer's, the chakiru within Rabbi Eliezer. Let's repeat the question one more time and then the second answer. The question on Rabbi Eliezer is that he agrees that a husband can be mefer nedarim in advance. He's going out of town and he says, any neder you make until I get back is mufar. And the Gemara wants to know, is it chal and then mufar, or is it just never chal at all? Let's try answer number 2, a third of the way down on Ayin Hamid Beis. Says the Gemara, Tashma, Omar lehen Rabbi Eliezer. A husband, a man himself, he doesn't have anybody else who's responsible for him. He has to take care of his own nedarim. And in a scenario where he is not able to be mefer his own nedarim when he makes a neder, he has to go to Bezdin, he can't do it on his own. Mefer nidre atzmo ad shelo yidor, and he's allowed to undo his own nedarim prior to making them. He can say, Bli ayin hara. I could say bli ned, not bli ayin hara. I could say bli neder. Bli ayin hara might not help. Bli neder might help, but even bekosher. Maybe a Taurus Nedarim would help. So, like in cases like that, he would be able to undo a neder. Then makom shemefer nidre ishto. Then in a scenario where he is able to be mefer his wife's neder mishet tidor when she makes a neder, eino din sheyafer nidre ishto achelo tidor. All the more so, it should be the case that he should be able to undo the wife's neder. And that's a very strong argument. And says the Gemara, my lab the ishto dumya delay. Isn't it that the nedarim of the wife are similar to the nedarim of the husband? Mahu de lo chaylan. Just like by him, there's 0 chalos. Af ishto nami de lo chaylan. Maybe we can infer from here that a husband, when he is mefer his wife's neder in advance, that there is no chalos at all. And if there's no chalos, what we said the nafkamina would have been his friend number 2 who wanted to join the no Oreo diet. She said, Hare alai, that she's not going to Oreos. The friend said, Va'ani. But according to this approach, lo chaylan, there's no chalos at all to the neder. So therefore, the woman number 2 would be pater from the neder as well. Says the Gemara, lo. And the Gemara answers rather simply, ha k'de'isa, the ha k'de'isa. You can't compare the status of nedarim of a husband to the status of nedarim of a wife, more broadly, of a man to a wife. And lav dafka, the husband, it could be any man, married or otherwise. So the Gemara says that this answer also doesn't work. We're going to stop right here, 7 lines from the bottom. We'll pick up tomorrow with answers 3 and 4, which will take us to the Mishnah on Ayin Vav Amud Beis, and then we'll finish up Ayin Vav Amud Beis. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Yeah, that was short. Yeah.
Shortest stuff.